yes, they rob and sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took out from the bottomless pit, my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs.
Hey, what's up, troops? Ops Sgt-Maj Veterans for Freedom, Jeff Evely, back with you now on this 5th day of October 2023. Winter is on the way. Time is a-flying by. There's lots going on out there today. But before I dive into it, I'm going to go ahead and say my good mornings to everybody. Thanks for always being on board with me. Lisa is saying good morning. Jeff and friends, good morning to you. Patricia says 07, good morning to you. Triple slashy right back at you. Mother of the Drummers is with us as always, saying good morning. Jeff and chat giving us the hearts and the triple slashies. Metzislav is saying good morning from Toronto. Good morning to you, brother. Thanks for always being with us. Jamie is saying good AM from Ontarible. Ontarible it is indeed. Good motorcycle riding, but that's about it. Colleen is saying I'm in Risdridgen, Ontarible. Okay, but commiserations to you for living in Ontarible. Eastern Ontario. Okay, that's what she means to say. Cindy's our most faithful of all watchers is saying, good morning, Jeff. Hearts, good morning, friends. And a smiley face giving the other hearts right back there, Cindy. Ken is saying cheers and giving us the /E Papa Squirrel. Good morning to you. And Terry is here saying, good morning, everyone. Daryl says, hey, everyone. Hey, Daryl. Leanne is saying, hello, friends watching from Merrickville, Ontario. And yeah, I was going to say Merrickville is kind of my favorite spot to go on the motorcycle there. It's a great spot to take a date or something like that. It's a nice little town that's got a good historic society, lots of historic buildings, and an old school main street with used bookstore I used to take my daughter to all the time. She was into that kind of thing. And Marion says, good morning, everyone, and Jeff from Crazy Ontario. Yeah, crazy it is. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. Chris is here giving us the /E right back at you. And Matt is saying, good day to you, sir. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and dive into this sucker. Share this out. Smash that like button. I am the worst guy for not promoting my own stuff, so give us a hand with that. Very much appreciated. But let's go ahead and see what's going on out there. Alrighty, here is our quote for the day. Not exactly philosophical, but it's from Kim Campbell, who was the first female Prime Minister of Canada back in '93 for just a few months there. Brian Mulroney did the honorable thing and stepped down when his popularity waned. Kim Campbell was the progressive conservative who stepped into the breach to take over the prime ministership. She ended up losing her own seat in the next election. And I think the quote from that was, gee, I'm glad I didn't sell my car. So, yeah, this... that election actually was the one, like the Conservatives lost their majority. The East really went red. The West went Reform, and so the Liberals ended up taking the government at that point in time. So yeah, all downhill since the 90s, folks. Okay, so the quote is, Canada is the homeland of equality, justice, and tolerance. And I thought that that was a good quote to kind of put things into perspective here, because that has been the case my entire life, is that Canada has been seen and has seen itself as the homeland of equality, justice, and tolerance. You know, we're world renowned for always saying sorry. And we take a lot of pride in our cultural mosaic. Nowadays, that's not the case. We're evil, racist Nazis, genocidal, in fact. And the reason why I want to highlight this is because, you know, it is not the case. I don't think anybody believes that we were once the homeland of equality, justice, and tolerance, and we somehow fell to Nazism along the way. That is very much antithetical to the experience of being Canadian, and also, it's just not what you would expect to see in a developing society. The more time marches on, the more we tend to become open and tolerant, and so on and so forth. And like levels of education are higher. People are generally more wise. And so it's indicative, I think, of the psyop that's being inflicted on us. That's part of the psyop, is that the West is evil and racist and Nazi. And of course, I'm always saying that I think China is the center of gravity in all of this. This being what is now World War III, even though it hasn't gone kinetic. It's in everything else. It's in the culture. It's in the finance. It's in the media. It's in the institutions. And so it's a Maoist, Marxist takeover. The weapon is shame. Shame on us for being Western. Shame on us for being capitalist. That's what Mao did in the Cultural Revolution, and the Great Leap Forward was they went around shaming landowners, capitalists, this kind of thing. They had entire stadiums shaming them with their signs around their necks that said they were dirty capitalist pigs or something to that effect. And so that's why we see this right now, is because of the psyop that's being inflicted on us. It's not the case, of course, that Canadians are anywhere near intolerant or hateful or any of those things. That just happened like 5 minutes ago, especially since the rise of the Trudeau regime in 2015. We all need to be ashamed of ourselves. But of course, it's all a psyop. It's not true. It's not who we are. So anyway, I thought that was a pretty good reminder of the country that we really are. So here is the meme for the day. And we have a couple of masked individuals, one getting an injection, the other one giving the injection. And the guy getting the injection says, "What variant does this protect me against?" And the person administering it says, "You're actually helping transgender Ukrainians fight global warming." Yeah, we're going to touch on that all today. That is it's part of the ideology. That's what I think this meme demonstrates. Is there are the collectivists, the statists, whatever you want to call them, those who worship power, whatever the regime, whatever serves the regime is true. And if the regime, says that things are a certain way, then that becomes part of the dogma, and people believe these things with a kind of religious fervor. It's a state cult. That's what authoritarian regimes really are. Is they're more like a state cult, and it's not the case that a single strong man dominates an entire society. He has a lot of backing in his own society. It's a tribe, the dominant tribe that runs things, and then there's everybody else. Okay, so moving on. Here is a cringeworthy clip. Trudeau warning. This is a major Trudeau warning on this one. Illuminati bot on Twitter is saying the rig is in. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gives a wink and bites his tongue at the new Speaker of the House of Commons, Greg Fergus. What is going on in Canada? Fergus, who is a Liberal, was elected after the previous Speaker was forced to resign for praising a Nazi on the world stage. So, this let's just give a look at the schmuck here and see what you make of it.
Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Très honorable.
So this is a clip from the other day here where Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau are giddily escorting this guy up to the speaker chair.
Vous me donnerez ça tout à l'heure. Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Okay, so after that, there's the speaker. This is back to the beginning of the clip, and the speaker's getting up, and he's recognizing the Premier Ministre, the Prime Minister, and Trudeau gets up with this reaction.
Très honorable.
Gives him a wink and sticks out his tongue. It's very cringy. I'm sorry about that, guys. I just want to show it because it is something that's making the rounds on Twitter there. It's probably nothing. I think that Trudeau, Illuminati bot here, I'll throw back to what he's saying. He's like, what is going on in Canada? Fergus, who is a Liberal, was elected after previous Speaker was forced to resign for praising a Nazi on the world stage. So that is a bit of an odd reaction from a very odd little man. It's probably nothing but Trudeau just being a weirdo because that's what he is. What if? I like to take the cynical view on things. So what if? And here we have a story from the Globe and Mail, which I don't pay for because they're already getting my money. They're robbing me blind with a gun in my face and the government hand in my pocket. So I don't get the full article. But here's the headline here. It says, military drops case against Lieutenant General Stephen Whelan. Now, I wanted to point this out because this is something that we've seen with the military is a bit of a purge of the senior leadership. Now, there was a whole spate of sexual assault allegations that sidelined all of the top generals there not too long ago with the sexual misconduct scandal just prior to our former minister or deputy minister of national defense there, Jody Thomas, taking her position alongside the prime minister as his national security advisor, national security and intelligence advisor, who then went on to be what I think was probably the invoker of the Emergency Measures Act, her and Jenna Charette. And as Trudeau's always saying, we follow the advice of the professional public service. So that's the senior public servants like Jody Thomas and Jenna Charette. And what happened right around that time was all the generals got sidelined by the sexual misconduct allegations. and it was General Woke Wayner Iyer who ended up sitting in the seat and giving the illegal order to impose the vaccine mandate on Canadian soldiers, which has since been determined to be an illegal order by the Military Grievance External Review Board. So there has been quite a bit of reasonable speculation, not just by me, but also by Catherine Christensen of Valor Law, who is the lead lawyer for Valor Legal Action Center. And they are the ones filing the class action on behalf of all the greatest Canadians alive who were affected by the vaccine mandate and absolutely abused by the chain of command. So there's been a lot of speculation that perhaps the sexual misconduct allegations, which are one by one, all being dropped, falling by the wayside, whether or not that was a conscious effort to get all of the principal people out of the way and get that spineless, throne-sniffing sycophant Woke Wayner into the seat so he would impose the vaccine mandate. So and that's kind of one of the things I think that happens when a coup is taking place and the the regime is looking for yes men to put in key positions who will disregard the law for the sake of advancing their careers. So you got to wonder, like, the way the previous speaker went out, like everybody scapegoated him and said that he was the guy who vetted the Nazi and invited him to Parliament. I don't believe it for a second. There's an entire intelligence security apparatus at the hands of at the disposal of the Privy Council office and the PMO. So nobody gets in there without vetting, and anybody who did a Google search on this guy would have realized that he was Waffen SS. So was it a setup? I don't know that it was, but it's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on here for any more signs of. And if it was, then what's coming next? I mean, why would the speaker need to be sidelined like that? It's not clear, but anyway, they're very happy that this guy is in the chair, and it's all very suspicious and seems like it might fit with a broader trend of this kind of authoritarian takeover sort of tactics. So we'll keep an eye on that. Okay, so here's Cat Canada, and she's sharing out a video clip here of Jordan Peterson. He had an interview with Piers Morgan, and she's tweeting out, Peterson, Justin Trudeau's mode of governance is to top each scandal with a bigger scandal. For the entire course of his governance, there has been one scandal after another. The newest one obliterates the previous ones in the minds of Canadians. In the last 2 weeks, he managed to go to the G20 to alienate the PM of India and start a trade war with India to make the Indian government so irritated that it decided not to give visas to Canadians anymore. And he did that to maintain his clown coalition with the narcissist in Canada, Jagmeet Singh, who is as bad as Trudeau but lacks his intelligence, which is a pretty dismal insult. Then he called the concerned parents misogynists and bigots, just like he did the trucker convoy, and that was just in the last week. So let's let Peterson speak for himself here.
Living in Justin Trudeau's Canada, it's a never-ending hallucinogenic, surreal dream. Justin Trudeau's mode of governance is to top each scandal with a bigger scandal, and he's really good at that. So it's like literally virtually for the entire course of his governance, there's just been one scandal after another, and what happens is the newest one obliterates the previous ones in the imaginations of Canadians. And I mean, in the last 2 weeks alone, he managed to go to the G20 to alienate the Prime Minister of India, to start a trade war with India, to make the Indian government so irritated they decided not to give visas to Canadians anymore. And he did that to maintain his idiot coalition with the narcissist in Canada, Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the Socialists, who is just as bad as Trudeau and lacks his intelligence, which is a really pretty dismal insult, let me tell you. And then he called a whole sequence of protesters across Canada who are parents, led mostly by Muslims who are quite traditionalist. He called them misogynists and bigots, just like he did the trucker convoy. And then he set up the circumstance so that while Zelensky was there, there was a literal Nazi, SS Nazi yet, so like the best kind of Nazi, let's say, addressing the Canadian House of Parliament. And then when he apologized, because he eventually did, he really didn't take any responsibility, and he offered his own speaker as a sacrificial lamb. It's like, and that was just last week. And,
I know.
and you might.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a few comments coming in here. Colleen is saying, I believe the reason for the Nazi was to get rid of the speaker to be replaced with a turd lapdog. Yeah, that very well could be the case. It's something I'm just kind of suspicious of. It's not something that I can conclude based on what we see right now, but we have seen this kind of a tactic in the past. Apparently, anyway, that is the case with all the generals being sidelined with these allegations of sexual misconduct that don't seem to be going anywhere. But the damage is done. They got their yes man in there, and the vaccine mandate imposed. So what's going to come now with the speaker? I mean, maybe he's not going to be fair or whatever, but we'll see. We'll be keeping an eye on this speaker, that's for sure. Here's the National Compost, and a little something just to remind everybody of the kind of the principled stand that Trudeau takes on the issues. And the title is Disinvitation from École Polytechnique Group Sent Trudeau Government into Damage Control Mode. Emails. Later, the Trudeau government adjusted its policy so that its initial voluntary gun buyback became the mandatory confiscation that Poly se souvient demanded. A Quebec-based anti-gun group declaring it would disinvite Prime Minister Justin Trudeau from the annual commemoration of a 1989 mass shooting because it disapproved of his latest gun control measure, sent several officials with the public safety minister into damage control mode, looking for ways to respond. Documents released under access to information show. The emails reveal that government staffers reacted with concern to news coverage of a March 2021 letter sent to Trudeau from Poly se souvient, an outspoken Canadian anti-gun group founded by survivors of the 1989 École Polytechnique shooting. Marc Lepine was a boomer. I want to point that out. I point these kinds of things out all the time. It's not the gun, it's the person wielding it. Obviously, people kill people, and they find all kinds of ways of doing it. This whole narrative around it being the gun's fault is obviously very flawed. And I say Marc Lepine was a boomer because it's the same. Around the same time, in the same generation that gave us the FLQ crisis and every serial killer that I can find, basically. I don't think there's been one born since 1967, roughly. That might be the latest date. Okay, so back to the article. The letter's subsequent coverage expressed the group's anger over Bill C-21, which the group described as quote-unquote lamentable. In a March 18 French-language article published by Radio-Canada, Poly se souvient accused Trudeau of quote-unquote abandoning and quote-unquote betraying victims of Canadian gun violence over the government's announcement of a voluntary quote buyback, close quote. The program for certain firearms instead of mandatory confiscation, which Poly se souvient had demanded. If the Prime Minister refused to change the policy, Poly se souvient said Trudeau would be declared persona non grata at future commemorations of École Polytechnique victims. Later that year, the Trudeau government adjusted its policy so that the initial voluntary buyback became the mandatory confiscation the group had been demanding. It is in the process of becoming law. Okay, so that's good enough, I think, for that article. You guys can go check out the rest of it if you want. But the thing is here, like this is what's driving politics. It is the minority. It's the special interest groups. This isn't based on data. This isn't a logical conclusion that's been arrived at. This is like pure politics, currying favor with all of his ideological bedfellows, and he's worried about how he looks. So, it's not like this is an issues prime minister. It's all about image and emotion. We tend to think like, never mind these people or those people because they're just a small minority of people. But it's not the majority that drives the Overton window way out to the fringes. It is always a minority. It's not like, the hardcore Nazis were the majority of Germans. No, they were just the dominant tribe. So That's what we see happening is politics being re-tribalized, and these ideological positions are driving policy. Okay, and here is CPAC, and they're tweeting out a quote from Jagmeet Singh. I'll just go ahead and show that.
Today is a bad day for Conservatives, but a great day for Manitobans.
Sorry, this is in reference to the election of the NDP in Manitoba.
Got to say, what an incredible historic campaign by the Premier-elect Wab Kinew. The people in Manitoba now have some hope. They have got a provincial government now and a Premier-elect who's going to defend the healthcare system, put people first. What is clear is that the people of Manitoba rejected the Conservative approach, the privatization of healthcare, the cuts to families, the cuts to people. They rejected the politics of division and hate. The Conservatives openly campaigned on not searching the landfill for the dead, the murdered bodies of Indigenous women. They made that a political point. They wanted to score political points off of a genocide. That was disgusting, and Manitobans rejected it. And I think it's a good day for.
And that is projection, and I reject that. He's standing on the graves of dead women and calling it a genocide when clearly, like, Canada's never had a genocide, okay? And they keep hitting us with this psyop that we're evil, Nazi racists and genocidal. So here's Jagmeet Singh playing these despicable politics as he accuses others of playing such despicable politics. So
for Manitobans today.
Okay, that's enough out of that clown. And here is Wab Kinew himself accepting his election as Premier of Manitoba, NDP, that is.
It's not easy being the first. Do you feel a weight of responsibility? Do you view it as a responsibility?
The responsibility that I feel is to be the best possible premier that I can be to the people of Manitoba, because that's what the people of this province deserve. So for me, the goal has never been to be the first of anything. The goal has been to be the best. And that's a tall order, especially when I made that comment in front of Gary Dewar, and I recognize that he's probably the premier that Manitobans look back at most fondly. But I'm going to try. And I think that's what our team staked our campaign on, is that we're going to try difficult things like fixing healthcare right now, staffing up the healthcare system, trying to bring people together after the pandemic. These are difficult things. It's going to be challenging. We're going to try, and we're going to put forward a really strong foot to serve you, the people of Manitoba.
It's not easy being the first.
All right. And yeah, somebody was just commenting he's not the first Native premier. I think that's probably right. I think I did see something about that. I don't have it queued up here, but it's just ridiculous. Like they are calling him the first Native premier. But they remember when they asked Trudeau like what kind of like long-term objectives he might have for the Liberal Party of Canada, and he was like, I think we should have the first prime minister, the first female prime minister of Canada. And everybody was like, wait a minute, have you never heard of King Campbell? Like, you know, it was a short tenure, it was just a few months, but she was a prime minister back in '93. So it's all contrived, obviously. Like I say, we're the most open and tolerant society that has ever existed, and they're making us out to be something other than that. And speaking of Wab Kinew, here's NDP wins Manitoba election as Wab Kinew set to become the first First Nations provincial premier in Canada. Now, I think the last one was actually Métis, so maybe they're trying to make the distinction between Métis, which I think literally means mixed. So there's some Indigenous blood in there with a lot of the settler blood as well, whereas maybe this guy's full-blooded or something like that. And it's all just very racist and gross. I don't even feel comfortable talking about it, quite frankly. But here is the Globe and Fail. And article, NDP wins Manitoba election as Wab Kinew set to become first First Nations provincial premier in Canada. Wab Kinew, the leader of Manitoba's New Democratic Party, is set to become Canada's first First Nations provincial premier after winning a majority government in Tuesday's election. Mr. Kinew, a 41-year-old former rapper, broadcaster, author, and university administrator, spent parts of his childhood on the Oneggemeng First Nation in Ontario and took over Manitoba's opposition NDP 6 years ago. His victory followed a bitter campaign in which he fended off attacks from the incumbent progressive conservative over a troubled past that included criminal charges, a history that he openly acknowledged as an important factor in turning his life around. He talked about negative stereotypes about Indigenous people. Okay. The fact that this individual has a criminal record is not the invocation of any kind of a stereotype about Indigenous people. So pretty gross racial politics being played there. But at least they mentioned the criminal record, because here is Wab Kinew's Wikipedia page. Okay, this is the rapper, now premier of Manitoba, and let's see. Oh, yeah, down here in his personal life. And it says, on February 24th, 2003, Kinew was arrested in Winnipeg after he was spotted erratically driving his father's 2000 Dodge Dakota by Henderson Highway late in the evening. A witness testified in court that they followed Kinew for several kilometers and saw him lose control of his vehicle twice after striking a guardrail and a streetlight. Kinew continued to drive several more kilometers with a blown-out front tire before police caught up to him in a at a parkade. Police reported Kinew as having bloodshot eyes and slurred speech, as well as being unsteady on his feet. A near-empty bottle of gin that was purchased that afternoon was found in the back seat. Kinew refused to undergo a breathalyzer after being taken into custody. For this incident, Kinew was convicted of impaired driving. On June 20, 2003, Kinew was charged by the RCMP with 2 counts of domestic assault, related allegations that he threw his then-girlfriend Tara Hart across the room during an argument. A Crown attorney and Kinew's lawyer appeared in court several times between January and June 2004. The charges were subsequently stayed. Kinew denies the allegations, while Hart has continued to maintain otherwise. These charges were previously unknown to most of Kinew's public life, only coming into light in 2017 via anonymous email sent to Winnipeg media outlets. Hart has said that she can only recall one alleged assault and does not know why 2 charges were filed. She claims that after she left Kinew, she was living outside Winnipeg and never heard from the Crown on why the charges were stayed. And June 27, 2004, while bound by a court recognizance on his previous DUI charge, Kinew was arrested following an altercation with a taxi driver. Kinew was intoxicated when he caught the cab shortly before 5 in the morning. According to the Crown prosecutor, Kinew, quote, began to insult the cab driver with some racial comments, which continued until the driver reached the intersection of Portage Avenue and Fort Street, close quote. While stopping at a red light, Kinew exited the vehicle, approached the driver's side door window, which was open, and punched the driver in the face. A passerby yelled out and momentarily interrupted the assault. When the taxi driver exited the cab, Kinew pushed him to the ground and kicked him, according to CBC News. Kinew attempted to flee the scene when police arrived, and Kinew declined to discuss the incident after being taken into custody. The taxi driver suffered a small laceration on his elbow and swelling to his face. On page 70 of his 2015 memoir, The Reason You Walk, Kinew claimed he had grabbed a cab with friends and had, quote, hopped out without paying, close quote, after which. Here's the excerpt from his memoir. Why the hell is a guy like this writing a memoir? The driver and who the hell is reading it? The driver caught up with us and pushed me. I turned around and shoved him back. Passing cabbie saw what was happening, stopped his taxi and jumped out to help his fellow driver. He swung and hit me in the face. I grabbed him and swung back. We stood in the middle of the street, arms flailing, in a full-on hockey fight mode. The police showed up and tackled me. It has been pointed out that Kinew's account of the incident in his book heavily differs from what was heard in court during his 2004 sentencing hearing, so he's a liar. Also, in 2004, Kinew was given a conditional discharge for an assault in Ontario after getting into a fight. Kinew also claims that in 2006, he was charged with stealing a money order, but that charge was stayed when he repaid the money. Kinew has gone through various exercises to rehabilitate himself from his issues with alcohol, including attending sweat lodges and a Sundance event where he fasted for 4 days and pulled buffalo skulls by piercings cut into his body. Kinew also began attending regular Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Kinew has since quit drinking and in 2014 applied for a pardon from the Canadian government, which was granted by the Parole Board of Canada in 2016. The Parole Board ruling removed the Canadian Police Information Centre database references to his convictions on assaulting a taxi driver, driving under the influence conviction, and for refusing a breathalyzer sample, and 2 breaches of court orders. All righty. So that's the caliber of individual that the left is going after right now. It's just a freaking criminal enterprise. Okay, here is Chris Dacey moving into some of the nonvoy that's going on in Ottawa right now. And I say nonvoy because the organizers have come out themselves and said this is not a convoy, and what they're going to do is they're going to walk through the streets of Ottawa and have their voices heard. And just based on some of the footage coming out right now, it's not going so well in some respects, especially as it comes to dealing with the police. And here is Dacey, and he's tweeting out senior tased on Wellington Street. This is video immediately preceding the video I posted earlier. In this video, you can clearly see that Billy is not resisting. The officer points his taser at multiple people before deploying the taser on a compliant Billy. This officer completely lost emotional control. He is dangerous and should not be on the street. Okay, so here is the video.
Middle of the road, that's your class.
Back up. Get off the road. Oh my God, asshole.
You guys should be ashamed of
He can't breathe. He had a heart attack. He can't breathe. He had a heart attack twice. Don't do that.
Middle of the road, that's your class.
Back up.
Okay, so that is pretty darn ugly, and they do eventually end up arresting the guy. There are a lot of upset people around right there. And we talked about this last night. Drew and I went on the Shadow Davis show, Shadow at Night, on Rumble, and you guys can check that out. And he was kind of asking a little bit about this. And yeah, basically what we're saying is like, look, this has been a long, rough slog for all of us. I think the tensions are running really high right now between police and protesters, especially in the freedom movement. There are a lot of factors to consider here, like Ottawa police in particular. They're in the bubble, the Ottawa bubble. So who knows how ideologically captured they are, but also this guy does appear like he's like Drew said, like he's in the black. Okay. So resiliency is a thing that we talk about in the military a lot. It's basically like, I think operational stress is a factor for the police right now. They've been dealing with a lot over the last couple of years. It's not to excuse any bad behavior on their part. Like this is obviously very ugly. And the police appear to be very aggressive, and irritability is one of the most noticeable, most prominent symptoms, most common that you will see when it comes to a stress injury. People get pretty easily amped up, when they've suffered a stress injury, when their resiliency is low. I think the tensions are running pretty high right now. And it's a pretty dangerous situation. And, we've been calling for a lot more calm and a lot less aggression. If it really is the case that the Chinese are running some kind of a psyop on us, like the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. The idea is to basically, pit the ideologically capture the elites or otherwise capture the elites and pit the state against the people against the state, and we'll all be too busy fighting each other to notice that man behind the curtain and what's going on with the Chinese Communist Party in particular, basically invading North America through PEI. Let's try to take a broader view on things, take a step back, breathe a little bit, and try to remember who the real enemy is here. We're not supposed to be fighting each other like this, it definitely doesn't serve our interests. you know, when it comes to the police, I mean, I was there when they stomped Chris Deering while we were holding the line with the truckers in Ottawa. So they're obviously in need of reform. I think culturally, there's a total lack of professionalism there that I witnessed, and as we can see, that seems to have carried forward quite a bit. So there is that need for reform, but also I wanted to call attention to just how aggressive they're becoming. And like I said, they're under a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. They're probably sick and tired of dealing with protesters every day. You know, tensions are high. Stay frosty out there, folks. Stay cool and do your best to not get into any kind of an altercation with them, even though they're probably not making it easy. And here is the update from Patriot Smoothie on the gentleman who was tased. He says, update, protester Billy Dalton is back home after being tased by Ottawa police near Parliament Hill earlier today. He had 2 previous heart attacks. His wife vocally informed police of his medical conditions. He was not resisting police, nor did he initiate the confrontation. I can't see what happened in the confrontation leading up to it. I think Shadow was saying something about he might have had a couple of beers or something like that and might have bumped into police. But you know, with tensions running high, like, and I'm not suggesting that he was trying to start any trouble there, but with tensions running high like that, the police, they're irritable, they're paranoid, and if some drunk maybe bumps into them, I'm not calling this guy names, pardon me, but anyway, somebody bumps into them like that, it might be perceived as an act of aggression right now at the present moment, whereas previously they might have handled it with a little bit more grace and professionalism. So be careful, folks, I think is what we're trying to say here. So here's Billy, and here are the marks from the taser. Looks like he's out now and he's okay, thankfully. And anyway, I'm just very, I'm not a religious person, but I guess I pray for everyone's safety in Ottawa right now. And here's Patriot Smoothie again. He says, here's what happened today in Ottawa that led an elderly protester being tased by the Ottawa police. So this is about a 3.5-minute clip. Here's Patriot Smoothie.
Patriot Smoothie here on what was a very chaotic day, the first day of the Save the Children convoy here in Ottawa. The convoy with Ron Clark, or Nonvoy, sorry, Ron Clark. We have Freedom
Nonvoy. I stole it from him. Yeah. And McCaskill JE on Facebook is saying, what happened was the taser man had a horn and he blew the horn and then the police grabbed him. That's what the report I have heard alleges. Yeah. And you know, it's probably one of those things like, geez, they're being just arseholes on the Hill. And, you know, maybe if you blew the horn close enough to a police officer, the police officer might have said, well, you know, that's tantamount to assault or something like that. Like, you could damage somebody's ears with a horn. But they do seem to be quite trigger happy when it comes to arresting free people in the freedom movement. So anyway, just be vigilant out there, folks, and stay cool, whatever you do. I certainly hope nobody was trying to mess with the police when they were blowing their horns, but you know, I think everybody's pretty fed up with them, and I think they probably feel the same way about us. So it's a recipe for disaster, right? And we definitely don't want that.
George and other people coming here, camping in Castleman, saying that they're going to come to Ottawa every day and do a lawful street protest to raise awareness about issues affecting children and freedom in general in Canada, with the stuff that everyone is going through right now, doing everything lawfully within their rights to do so, coming down here and having a pedestrian protest. However, a lot of conflict starting very quickly. First up, we had Patty, an elderly individual protester who was hands-on with the Ottawa police, getting into her personal space and pushing her around a little bit. Then we had a $1,000 bylaw ticket given to Brian Dirksen, who has been here on Parliament Hill for almost 2 years now straight, doing this every day without issue. So suddenly the rules are being very selectively applied. So escalation after escalation. And then we got to Crystal Peters, who was carded on the street, which is unlawful, that she was demanded to surrender her identity and her name, which she did not have a legal obligation to do.
And that is true. And I saw the arrest of Crystal Peters as well. Yeah, very aggressive tactics on the part of the police. This is pretty darn authoritarian. And Blenda is asking, who said he had a couple of beers? Please get a couple of beers. Please get proof. I mean, That was something the Shadow said there last night. I don't have any proof of that, and I don't mean to rumor monger. This is just kind of some of the reports that are coming out around this. And Terry is saying that he tripped and fell into the cop. I have heard that as well. I don't know. I can't find the video for what led up to what preceded the arrest. But I would say it was probably something to that effect. Like he bumped into the police, he tripped and fell into the police. Maybe he was less than courteous with the police, and they're a little bit fed up. Again, it's just a very volatile situation.
As far as I'm aware, under the laws here in Canada for carding, you do not have to surrender your identity to police unless you're driving a bicycle or a car. And so she did not have to do that. She refused. She was therefore arrested, charged with obstruct police. And what else was she charged with?
Disturbing the peace and obstruct a peace officer.
And she also had a noise amplification device, a megaphone that was not even turned on at the time. So she was criminally charged twice for that. And then finally, we had another incident with Billy, an elderly protester down here who was crossing the crosswalk at Wellington and Metcalfe, having a device. Actually, this is the device.
This is it. Yeah.
This is the device right here. So this is a horn device. So he apparently had used this device to emit a sound, and he was immediately blindsided by two Ottawa police officers, according to eyewitnesses, tackled down into the middle of the intersection, and shortly afterwards tased multiple times. Eyewitnesses say there was no resisting from Billy. He did honk this device, but at no time did he ever attack an officer or push into them or anything. He was just tackled by police, brought to the ground, subdued. The police officer then drew his taser weapon, his service taser, and then tased the elderly gentleman several times on the ground as he was subdued. And in the frantic panic that ensued with the agitated crowd clearly observing this elderly gentleman being tased multiple times, the frantic Ottawa police officer seen in a video taking his weapon, which is deployed at this point with prongs inside of the individual under him. So he had his knees on the individual and his partner as well, takes his weapon that is deployed and starts frantically waving it into the crowd of bystanders. And then at one point, I believe the second officer also drawing his taser, which was not deployed, and waving it around too. So complete loss of control there, emotional control from the Ottawa Police Service. We need answers about what happened there. That was totally unacceptable, a totally unacceptable escalation of this, whatever they're doing here. It doesn't make any sense. And for example, if that officer who had his prongs in the senior gentleman had fired his weapon, had pulled the trigger on his weapon, it would have done nothing but shock the individual under him again. So it doesn't make any kind of sense. That's where we are tonight. The Ottawa police have not made any kind of comment on the incident yet. We'll wait to see what they have to say and how they try to justify this. From Ottawa, I'm Patriots Movie. Patriots.
Oh, great job, Patriots Movie. And I like how he's pointing out the irrationality of the cops' actions. And that is what I'm trying to highlight here too, is just how irrational and erratic they are acting. And that kind of irritability and erratic behavior is symptomatic of low resiliency. And yeah, I mean, we have a serious problem with the professionalism of especially the cops in the big cities and in the more populated areas, the bigger police forces in this country right now. So definitely a need to reform there. And people are kind of saying that the cops are the ones making things violent. Yeah, I don't dispute that. They certainly were violent at the trucker convoy in Ottawa, and I think that tensions are running high right now. So the potential for a serious incident is pretty high. I'm glad that they're not going forward with the plan that we reported on here before, which was to blockade the financial district in downtown Toronto and force a standoff with police that would effectively amount to a hostage-taking situation. Because can you just imagine how that would have ended? Not well at all, not for anybody. Anyway, this is the situation we find ourselves in. We got to play it smart. Cooler heads need to prevail. Here's Blacklock's reporter, and they're reporting Canada's unsafe for CBC. And so this is what the CBC is reporting right now. Canada is unsafe for Canadian Broadcasting Corporation's reporter, says CEO Catherine Tate. The network chief, in a report to Parliament, claims CBC employees, quote, face rising threats to their safety, both online and in the field, close quote. Yeah, I think people are pretty fed up with the establishment in general. It's the police forces, it's the media, it's the politicians, it's our institutional leadership, like I'm always pointing to. But let's try to go easy on each other out there and just get ourselves some new institutional leaders. It is the generational changing of the guard that needs to happen, from the boomers to Generation X, that resolves the fourth turning. And we have a pretty volatile situation out there in Canada right now, so we need to be very careful about how we conduct ourselves and how we react in these situations. We don't want to react. React is an emotional response. A response is a rational one, and that's what we need to do. And it's sad to see. It's really sad to see these kinds of thug tactics being deployed by the cops. But there's plenty. It's all the more reason for concern, and especially over people's safety. Okay, here's the best damn roofer, Mr. Freedom, and he's doing a pretty good little video here that I think he's kind of got the right idea in a lot of this. So I showed a video of him here yesterday where he was confronting some child butcher advocates. They're waving the pride flag on a protest line, but he's having a good time, and I think that's kind of what we need to do. And the convoy was such a good time. I hear a lot of people talking about raising the vibe in Canada, and here's a pretty good example of that. So here we go.
Hey guys, just me, Lord Big Time here today. And since I was attacked by the left socialist communist snake mob, I was under fire for bad reviews and people trash talking me online, saying that I'm an alcoholic, trying to call every client that I've ever been with or anyone I'm associated with, calling me names, calling me a drunk. And guys, I just want to let you know what that actually did for me. It gave me a plethora of work, and now the people that hire me are definitely liberal, so that's a good thing. And then you called and told them I was a bunch of drunk idiots and I'm a piece of shit, so now majority of the homeowners leave me a full case of alcoholic beverages. Well, hate to be rude. Someone gives you a drink, you drink it. Here's to the left mob. Thank you very much. Big time! Double G, big time! Hey guys, just me, Lord.
All right. So well done, Mr. Freedom. Quite good at stirring the pot, as somebody just said in the comments there, and he's having a good time with it too. And Cindy is saying Josh does it right. Yeah, Josh does do it right. He's a real incredible young man. And let's see. McCaskill JE on Facebook is saying, I know V4F has been trying hard to warn people of the dangers of this operation, given the things they know, trying to protect and advise people of the problems and danger of this endeavor under the circumstances. Many were demonizing them for trying to warn people. They foresaw this potential of a very volatile situation that could and likely would arise under this particular operation. Yeah, that is what we're trying to do. And of course, we're doing it out of love for the country and for Canadians. And, the thing is that, man, oh man, they've been trying so hard to get that insurrectionist label to stick. They failed to do so during the trucker convoy. The regime is pretty desperate right now. I mean, it's just been cabinet shuffle after cabinet shuffle and all kinds of new speaker and all this stuff all the time. So they're very much on the run. And the last thing we want to do is give them that gift of an event that they could easily tar and feather as the insurrectionist movement that they always wanted in order to bring us under a state of permanent martial law. So I like what Mr. Freedom is doing, just kind of going out on his own here. And he does some pretty good videos, and he's engaged, on a local level, on an individual level. And you can just kind of go out there and shatter worldviews, one smooth brain at a time. So and have some fun doing it. There's a lot of hopelessness out there right now, and the morale is pretty low, and that is a threat to mission success. So let's keep the morale up, and good job to Mr. Freedom for doing that. Okay, so here is Noah Chartier from the Epoch Times, and he's tweeting, Tory MPs today gave a standing ovation to Liberal MP Ken MacDonald, Newfoundland, who broke ranks and voted in favor of Poilievre's motion to nix the carbon tax. The motion, like many similar ones previously, was defeated by all other parties. But this is a good sign. So let's check it out.
Mr. Vong.
Mr. Vong.
Mr. McDonald Avalon. Mr. Vong.
So there you go. The cracks are forming, even in the Liberal ranks. That is a good sign, I think. This guy decided to, break ranks with the Liberal Party and vote for his constituents. So this is something I think, we keep the pressure up, and these cracks are going to get bigger and longer. And, the Liberal Party is in huge trouble right now at the polls. So what we're doing is working. And the last thing we need is to give them a gift of another Emergencies Act. That would not just be a setback, but probably, just sabotage the whole endeavor. And Cameron is saying, keep the morale up. I love it. Absolutely. Yeah, that's it. We got to be happy warriors, right, guys? That's I think imperative right now. It's good to focus on keeping that morale up. And remember, it's only temporary. Those are the two things you got to remember when the chips are down, troops. Is number one, it's only temporary, and number two, it can always get worse. So whatever you do, don't do anything to make it worse. Okay, here is a bit of a setback. The police on guard is reporting on Supreme Court of Canada denies hearing appeal case from churches regarding restrictions during COVID. Supreme Court of Canada denies hearing appeal case from churches regarding restrictions during COVID. The Supreme Court has officially ended any hope of appeal, refusing to hear from several church leaders, issued fines worth hundreds of thousands of dollars for opposing provincial mandates, stating, quote, "It's not a matter of national public interest to pursue," close quote. Like, they're wrong about that. And as I've been saying, we are going to get mixed results from the courts. And it's important to put that into perspective. Okay. We have all kinds of other cases that are moving forward, and people are getting, all kinds of people are getting their charges dropped from Ottawa. There is lawfare out there that's being pursued, and there are some really crappy decisions that are coming out. But I think in the aggregate, overall, things are definitely turning and moving in the right direction. They're not accepting like judicial notice anymore, this kind of thing. So yeah, file your judicial reviews, take these fights to the courts. And I think that's probably the most productive avenue that we can pursue right now. Back to the article. This was the last hope after Ontario Supreme Court of Justice and Court of Appeal dismissed the case, stating, quote, "Church restrictions were a justifiable infringement on Canadians' freedom of religion," close quote. Representing Pastor Hildebrandt of Ontario and others from across Canada, the Justice Centre of Constitutional Freedoms, JCCF, shared one argument stating the provincial health order abused her discretion, quote, "in selectively permitting and prohibiting in-person gatherings," close quote. While gyms and restaurants were permitted to remain open, church services were denied despite their willingness to follow the exact same protocols of hand washing, masking, social distancing, and capacity limits. Yeah, and I think that this is an element of the PSYOP again, like it is Westernism that's under attack in the culture war. Christianity in particular is a Western cultural phenomenon, and so it is under attack, unlike the other religions, or to a degree that we won't see with the other religions because it is deemed Western. The leaders fighting this know their parishioners, given the opportunity, and regardless of any protocols they may have to follow, would embrace the opportunity to seek solace in their place of worship, a common practice during times of crisis and fear. However, the government's priority appeared to be a mixed message of safety for the greater good at the cost of your personal well-being, and reward for good behavior, the ability to socialize freely with Vax Pass, absent any scientific proof of risk reduction. Not once was the mental health of the individual considered, not for those seeking comfort in their congregation, nor those nursing homes desperate for the touch of a loved one. Regardless of their loss, we support the efforts of these individuals in standing for the rights and freedoms of their congregation, in turn, the rights of Canadians. So, yeah, like I said, that's it's a part of the psychological warfare, and some of these other businesses, they might have made some concessions on the gyms and things like that, so they could point to those things to say, look, this was all reasonable. These are reasonable restrictions, but it's just an excuse, and it's a spiritual, psychological war, and one of the main targets is Christianity. But hey, we're going to keep fighting, right? What else can we do? So here's Sean Rickard. This is for he says, good news, mootness motion denied today in BC. The BC government had made an application to dismiss the cases as moot. The court disagreed and will give reasons orally on Friday morning. Yeah, there are other cases, like I say, that are moving forward. The establishment is convulsing, basically, at this point. But just that single, loss in the courts that I just showed there, that is not the be-all, end-all. Like, this is a war. It doesn't hang on a single battle. We got to keep fighting. We got to be strategic. We got to let cooler heads prevail. And like I said, in the aggregate, on the whole, things are going to turn around and move in the right direction, as long as we don't screw it up. Okay, here's Tucker Carlson, episode 28, Trans Incorporated. Genital mutilation is not just a fad, it's a full-blown industry. How did something this demented happen so quickly? Well, it's a fourth turning. And then in the fourth turning, gender roles are at their narrowest. They're at their widest during the first turning, like the GI generation with housewives and breadwinners, and they gradually narrow from the second turning to the third turning. And in the fourth, it's the utter destruction of gender and the embracing of androgyny. And that's something that I was going to say Phyllis Schlafly. What was her name? Camille Paglia, art historian and second wave feminist, pointed out in a video that I showed not too long ago, where she was talking about how the art shifts away from strong masculine figures and curvy feminine figures to more androgynous figures in the immediate lead up to the collapse of civilizations all over history. That's what it is. It's that whole cycle of history that goes through the four turnings. Okay, here is a little bit of Tucker's show from last night.
What I call transgender Inc. deserves to be highlighted in a very visible way. Why? Sex reassignment surgeries and hormone replacement therapies are a combined value of $2.94 billion. By 2030, it would increase to $7.5 billion. There are no long-term studies that show the efficacy of taking these very powerful pharmaceuticals. One of the most graphic and invasive procedures is a vaginoplasty. That is where male to female patient is castrated, testicles are removed, and the penis is inverted to create a vaginal cavity.
They can't even do lip filler in a convincing way in this country. You can't tell me they can recreate something as complex as female genitalia.
The Biden administration has kind of tacitly endorsed reconstructive surgery for minors.
A child will often know that they are transgender from the moment that they have any ability to express themselves.
There's 300,000 transgender youth. That number has, by the way, doubled over 5 years. They face a lifetime of zero sexual function.
It's almost too crazy.
It's perverse.
If someone had told you 15 years ago that kids in your, say, daughter's 9th grade class would be coming to school in drag and would be affirmed in that by their teachers and the broader community, you would say there's no chance that could happen in this country. And of course, it has happened, and it's now happening at scale. Transgenderism is not just a fad, it's a fact of life across this country, not just the elites, but in small towns everywhere. And so the question is, how did something this unnatural and prima facie demented happen so quickly? Well, of course, there's got to be money involved. Interestingly, no one that we're aware of has taken a close forensic look at where the money's coming from and where it's going. And that's why we're so delighted to see research done by our next guest, Chris Moritz, who's a longtime investment banker and policy guy, has done on this question. Transgenderism. It didn't happen by accident. Some people are profiting from it. And with that, we introduce our guest who joins us here on set. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. It's beyond pleasure to be here.
Well, we're grateful to have you. And there's been a lot of complaining about this. It's clearly a destructive trend that's hurting people, particularly children, destabilizing the society, and it doesn't make any sense. So it's making all of us irrational. But for some reason, nobody has taken the time to figure out who's profiting from this. And you've done what I think is a spectacular dive into this, an amazing overview of the economics of transgenderism. So with that, I'll just kind of back off and let you describe what you found.
Well, I think there's so many elements to this issue.
Yes.
Philosophical, religious, even.
Yes.
Religious sociological,
especially.
Of course.
Yeah.
But the economics of it, what I call transgender Inc., is something that has gotten very, very little attention, and it deserves to be highlighted in very visible way.
Yes.
Because this is a market that in 2018, this market is made up of sex reassignment surgeries and hormone replacement therapies, which include a number of different pharmaceutical products. But the combined value sales of sex reassignment surgeries and the pharmaceutical products in 2018 was $2.94 billion. By 2022, that figure had rose to $4.18 billion. And by 2030, our analysis indicates that would increase to $7.5 billion, which represents an 8.5% compound annual growth rate, which is relatively significant within a healthcare vertical.
Well, it's bigger than the entire healthcare budgets of some African countries. I mean,
sure.
It's a lot of money.
Well, considering also that the population of patients is about 1 million people, there's 1.6 million transgender adults, or I should say over the age of 13, transgender individuals in the United States as of 2022. Now, that number has doubled in 10 years. So in 2011, there were 700,000 transgender Americans over the age of 13. And by 2022, that had risen to 1.6 million. Now,
so you just ended the debate over whether this is something a person is born with.
Well, I think that there is absolutely zero scientific evidence that would suggest that there is a gene, chemical alteration, any kind of somatic, physical, biological element to transgenderism that would result in what has become known as gender dysphoria. And in fact, if we get deeper into the medical research, we find that there are no clinical studies, none, on the long-term efficacy, consequences, and in many cases, debilitating life-term effects of these procedures and pharmaceutical products, especially on children.
Were there no studies?
There are none. In fact, the FDA has not approved a single pharmaceutical product used in gender transition specifically for gender transition. So testosterone, estrogen, and what are called GnRH agonists or puberty blockers are all prescribed off-label. So they do not have specific FDA approval for gender transition, because
kind of like ivermectin didn't have specific FDA approval for the treatment of COVID. It would have been off-label if it was prescribed. And we all know what happened with that. It was completely suppressed, even down to the level of the local pharmacy. Why? Well, cui bono, right? It's the pharmaceutical companies. Cui bono is Latin for who benefits. And that's kind of the question we need to ask whenever we're looking at the nonsensical situation like this. Is cui bono? Who's making money off it? Well, it's the pharmaceutical companies. And it does a pretty good job of outlining how much money they really are making there. And he mentions that there are no long-term follow-up studies to support the efficacy of these transition. So I just kind of pulled this up while he was talking. This is a study that I often refer to. This was from Sweden. It says long-term follow-up of transsexual persons undergoing sex reassignment surgery, cohort study in Sweden. And this is the one that, in my opinion, has stood the test of time. It's been around for a while. And I just want to show you like what long-term outcomes. Here's what we're looking at. This is any cause of death matched on sex at birth. The solid lines here, black is for male. The gray line is for female. So this is the general population, people who do not undergo sex reassignment surgery. People who undergo sex reassignment surgery are shown in the dashed lines, black for male to female, so born male, transition to female. And then the gray dashed line is for female to male. And as you can see, they die off at much higher rates, much sooner than the general population. So it's not about health, it's about money. You can see once they get out to about the 10 years time at follow-up, that's really what we're looking for. Like some of the gender ideologues, they'll point to other studies that only follow up like a few years after the surgery, 2 years sometimes. You know, when they're up in this range here, but once they get out to about the 10-year, and one of the ones that I've been seeing a lot actually uses data from the 80s, and the average age of transition was like 28 or 29, as opposed to children being transitioned, which is a very new phenomenon. It's only been happening for the last few years. But these are the kinds of outcomes that we can come to expect when people transition. It dramatically shortens lifespan. It leads to all kinds of problems. I'll just read from the conclusions paragraph here. Persons with transsexualism after sex reassignments have considerably higher risks for mortality, suicidal behavior, and psychiatric morbidity than the general population. Our findings suggest that sex reassignment, although alleviating gender dysphoria, may not suffice as treatment for transsexualism and should inspire improved psychiatric and somatic care after sex reassignment for this patient group. So I think that's a little bit of a cop-out in the conclusions there, where they say that these findings should inspire improved psychiatric and somatic care after sex reassignment for this patient group. And some of the gender ideologues, they'll point to this and they'll say, this study doesn't say that you shouldn't transition children. It says you should provide them with improved psychiatric care, or this group needs improved psychiatric care. Yeah, after you sexually butcher them, they're going to need a lot of psychiatric care. That's what that says. It doesn't say that you should go ahead and transition children. And again, I'm going to throw back to the cui bono here, which is big pharma. They make a ton of cash off of this. And I see that Zebek's Demise was just commenting over on Rumble, and they're saying big pharma wants everyone to be hooked on their shit. Yeah, that is what's happening. I think it's part of the tyranny under which we are now living is the pharmaceutical tyranny, and it has everything to do with turning us all into livestock for those big pharma profits. And the pensions are all invested in the market broadly. A lot of these hedge funds, mutual funds, that kind of thing, they just go wherever the money is, and there is big money in this. So people are quite likely, I think, having their retirements funded by the sexual butchery of children. So Madam Breezy is saying, if this doesn't scream they want your children to be big pharma customers for life, I don't know what else clearly shows this. Yes, exactly. That is the case that I'm making. And here I went ahead and pulled up. This is allbrands.market. So, it's just some stock website. And this is Lupron. And Lupron is the puberty blockers that they administer to children with gender dysphoria. And this is a very new phenomenon. And Lupron is prescribed off-label. It was developed as a cancer treating drug, and it induces a kind of medical menopause, and in children and girls. so that they don't continue to develop properly. It leads to all kinds of problems. I think in males, the thing is that if they block puberty, then puberty is when the penis actually grows to an adult size, and so they end up stuck with a micro penis that doesn't even provide enough material for the vaginoplasty. None of it makes any sense until you put the profitability lens over it. And as you can see over here, it says share price variations over 5 years. Lupron is up 56%. That's a 56% increase in their stock value over 5 years. So that's what's happening. Okay, here we have Cosmin Dezurdza on Twitter, and they're saying, wow, conservative BC MLA Bruce Benman just exposed the hypocrisy of the entire BC legislature. If he can't read a passage from a sexually explicit book being made available by Abbotsford SD to sixth graders on the public record, why can it be accessed by kids? Great question.
Mr. Speaker, I stand here today as a distraught father and grandfather. I stand here with parents in Abbotsford who are deeply concerned about sexually graphic and explicit content available in certain fictional books within our public school libraries to children as young as 11 years of age. Mr. Speaker, I would ask that the House brace themselves for the following words from one such book called Eleanor Park, and I quote, "I know you're a slut, you smell like cum, nothing but a bitch and heat."
Member,
end quote.
Member, please do not use that kind of language.
I apologize, Mr. Speaker, and I actually would retract those words. Mr. Speaker, this language is deeply disturbing. As a grandfather, it shakes me to the core when I imagine that children could be exposed to this deeply disturbing, degrading language in British Columbia Public Schools libraries. Mr. Speaker, will this NDP Premier please answer to concerned parents, grandparents, and families in Abbotsford and throughout this province, why is the sexually explicit book Eleanor and Park and others like it available in British Columbia public schools for children as young as 11 years of age?
Of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to say, not just as a Minister of Education, but also as a parent, that our schools are places which are, we want to make it, they are spaces which are safe, inclusive, and welcoming for all students. And the teachers are using resources that are age appropriate, audience appropriate, to give those values, give those teachings that are so important to create those welcoming environments. So
welcoming for potential pedophile victims and permanent medical patients for Big Pharma. That's what it sounds like.
Just want to reiterate this, Mr. Speaker, that the resources that teachers are imparting, that teachers are teaching, are age appropriate and they are audience appropriate.
Party House Leader Supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm asking as a parent, as a grandparent, to the Premier, to the Minister, if the words I just read were inappropriate and unacceptable and clearly disturbing to this House, how is it that those same words are appropriate to be read by a sixth grader as young as 11 years of old in our public system? How were those words safe and inclusive?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I cannot comment on the particular books that the member is mentioning, but I can talk as a parent whose children are going to the public school system, who have gone through the public school system, and I have never encountered anything inappropriate being taught to my children. And I take such pride in our public education system. I am so proud of the teachers who are working every day. I, in fact, raise my hands to all the work that is happening in our schools. Our schools are very diverse places, Mr. Speaker. And as leaders, as school leaders, it is our responsibility that we respect that diversity and we
Okay, that's enough out of her. And the specific logical fallacy that she is engaged in here is called ignoratio elenchi, as in beside the point. So he makes a point, he gives the evidence, he says, here is a problematic passage from a book being given to sixth graders. She never addresses the central issue, which is that specific example. She just dances around it and talks about diversity and safety in the classroom, but nobody was asking her to comment on that. They were talking about this one specific issue. So nobody's advocating for bigotry in the classroom or anything like that, but that is the response that she's giving. And it's logically specious. So we like to highlight that around here because I think that is the way through all of this. We're living through an era of sophistry, irrationality. We got to get back to our roots as a civilization and embrace our founding philosophies. And I advocate for things like stoicism and cynicism and logic. Aristotle, we should be teaching that kind of thing in classrooms, not indoctrinating kids into this harmful ideology. Okay, here's Charlie Kirk moving into the United States. He says, breaking, Republican Matt Gaetz has made good on his threats and filed a motion to vacate the chair against Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I believe this was over a major omnibus spending bill. Again, like they almost shut down the government here. That's something that happens in the United States. If they don't pass a budget, the government shuts down. So they did end up passing the spending bill, but looks like McCarthy, who was only just a few months ago put in the speaker's chair, I wasn't really rooting for him. I was rooting for Jim Jordan. Probably improvement over what we had previously, but still not far enough. Enough with the half measures already. And Matt Gaetz, I think, is similarly minded. So he is really fighting hard there down in the U.S. So here is the clip.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida now seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A1 of Rule 9, I rise to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House.
The gentleman will state the form of his resolution.
Declaring the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives to be vacant. Resolved that the office of Speaker of the House of Representatives is hereby declared to be vacant.
Under Rule 9, a resolution offered from the floor by a member other than the majority leader or the minority leader as a question of the privileges of the House has immediate precedence only at a time designated by the chair within 2 legislative days after the resolution is properly noticed. Pending that designation, the form of the resolution noticed by the gentleman from Florida will appear in the record at this point. The chair will not at this point determine whether the resolution constitutes a question of privilege. That determination will be made at the time designated for consideration of the resolution. The chair will now continue with 1-minute speech. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Okay, so there it is. There, and somebody was just saying here, Canada and U.S. speakers both replaced within a week. Yes, I don't think like in the case of Canada, though. I mean, I'm suspicious about them maneuvering a yes man into place who's going to favor the Liberals. That doesn't seem to be what's happening here in the United States. Matt Gaetz is a Republican, and he's very based. I like Matt Gaetz. So moving on here, a little more on that. Breaking, Speaker nominee Jim Jordan says he opposes any future aid to Ukraine. Says we need to secure the border and focus on crime in our cities. Do you support this? Well, I think most of us around here would definitely support that. And this is the guy who was kept out. He was one of the contenders for the speakership that resulted in McCarthy taking over. And as we've seen, it's been nonstop funding of Ukraine, and everybody's got a Slava Ukraine. And that is not representative of the will of the people, but Jim Jordan would be an excellent candidate for speaker. I think he's a real pit bull. Just watch him in committee. He really knows how to hold people's feet to the fire, and he's a strong, hard fighter. So yeah, let's keep our eye on this one. This could be a very positive development in the United States. And Jim Jordan, I was just looking him up. He's like, I think he was born in 64. So depending on the definition that you go by, it could be considered a Gen Xer. This might be representative of the kind of shift that needs to take place at the helm of our institutions in order to resolve the fourth turning. I think it would definitely be a step in the right direction anyway. So here's Jim Jordan. Oh, this is Il Donaldo Trump on Twitter, by the way. It's a pretty funny account.
I think we have three objectives this Congress. Three fundamental things we have to get done in the 118th Congress. First, pass the bills that fix the problems. In 2 years' time, we have a border that is no longer a border. We have a military that can't meet its recruitment goals. We have bad energy policy, bad education policy, record spending, record inflation, record debt, and a government that has been weaponized against we the people, against the very people we represent. So we need to pass legislation to address all that. And I hope my Democrat colleagues will join me. I really do. But I have my doubts. And if they don't, and if Chuck Schumer says, no, we're not going to take up that legislation that we pass, and if Joe Biden won't sign it, so be it. They'll have to answer to the people in 2024. Second, we can never, ever let a bill like the one that passed 12 days ago, $1.7 trillion spent, we can never, ever let that kind of legislation pass again.
That looks like McCarthy standing up to applaud that.
We have to pass a budget that makes sense, that's good common sense, then do the 12 appropriation bills that recognize it's the people's money, not ours, and send it to the Senate, and then stand firm on that legislation. And again, if they won't take it up and Joe Biden won't sign it, we can stand firm on a CR or something. We can have that fight, but we are not going to have what took place a week and a half ago ever happen again. And then finally, third, and this is important, we got to do the oversight, do the investigations. We have to do the oversight and the investigations that need to be done. This idea that bureaucrats who never put their name on a ballot but think they run the country, who have assaulted our constituents' First Amendment liberties, they need to be held accountable. That has to happen. We need to do it.
All right, well said by Mr. Jim Jordan. As you can see, like he's pretty astute, pretty sharp guy, great fighter too. Really knows how to hold everybody's feet to the fire. And like I said, this is all kind of a fallout from this incredible spending bill that made its way through. So big shift there, I think, happening in the U.S. And I think it's positive. It's not like the speaker change that we just saw. It's probably going to be a step in the right direction. So keep an eye on that. Here is Marjorie Taylor Greene appearing on InfoWars. And she's tweeting out, we have only one choice for speaker, President Donald J. Trump. His policies stop the globalists and communists more than anyone else. He is the leader of the Republican Party and the only person we can trust to save America. So here she is on InfoWars.
We only have one choice to save America, Alex, and it's President Trump. I've supported
James Bullock is with us, ladies and gentlemen. A bit late, was listening to our leader on another podcast. Okay, James, you owe me some push-ups, brother. Drop and give me 20.
President Trump from the beginning, just like you have. President Trump has a 4-year proven record. His policies were working. His policies were stopping the globalists. His policies were against the communists.
Plus, they hate him more than anybody. I mean, my God, they act like he's a high noon to a vampire.
That's right. They do hate him more than anybody. And you know who hates them the most? Washington, D.C. So I'm going into this next speaker's race, and the only candidate I am supporting is Donald John Trump.
Yeah.
Because Washington, D.C. needs to be reminded, this town needs to wake up and accept the fact that Republican voters all over the country want him back in the White House. He's the only leader of the Republican Party, and he truly is the only person that we can trust to save America. And through that, Alex, that is saving the world. And there's many people all over the world hoping and praying that we put President Trump
So,
back in the White
Congresswoman, I've been.
All right. So could you imagine Speaker Donald Trump? That would be phenomenal. And Cora is asking, is the impeachment against Biden going through? Anyone know? It is. It's in the proceedings have already started. So yeah, that's another sign of hope. And unknown last name is saying patriots are bringing the whole damn corrupt establishment to its knees. Yeah, I think more and more people are waking up, and the patriots are really kind of coming together. It happens organically. It's not like the leftist hive mind where they just deploy mindless mob to drive the Overton window way out to the totalitarian left. But it is happening, and people are getting active, and that's what we all need to do, right? We got to get active in our politics, at local level, provincial level, federal level, everywhere, and anybody can do that. Even and I don't mean that in a diminishing way, but even what Mr. Freedom is doing there, some grassroots activism, the likes of which he's doing. He's a great troll, I think. All of that is kind of what needs to happen. People just need to get active and stay frosty, stay cool, calm, collected throughout. So it's pretty positive developments, I think, starting to come together here in the United States. Okay, here is Desiree, and she's saying 4D chess. This would be a major panic in DC. We are all for that. Speaker Trump has a nice ring to it. Okay, here's Matt Getz.
I didn't even bring up Trump as speaker. A reporter asked me about it, and I responded honestly. And frankly, Speaker Trump has a great ring to it. I didn't even bring up.
Yeah, I like Matt Getz. He's pretty solid. So, and you know, it's just that radical candor for which I'm always advocating. Speak that unmitigated truth unabashedly. If you're worried about offending somebody, then that probably just means you're over the target. So now is the time. Now is the time to start offending these people. Okay, and here is Sprinter on Twitter, and they're saying Donald Trump, before his next court hearing in New York, said that he does not want the Speaker of the House of Representatives because someone must, quote, make America great again as president. Earlier, U.S. Congressman Tory Niels nominated Donald Trump for the post of Speaker of the House of Representatives. Meanwhile, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee of the House of Representatives, Ohio Republican Jim Jordan, announced plans to propose his candidacy for the post of Speaker of the House, NBC reports. Jordan became the first member of Congress to announce plans to run for the vacated Speaker's seat. Okay, so here is the greatest of all boomers and Donald Trump.
Did you take the job?
A lot of people have asked me about it. I'm focused. You know, we're leading. I don't know you. I'm sure you don't read too much in the papers. But we're leading by like 50 points for president. You know, my focus is totally on that. If I can help them during the process, I would do it. But we have some great people in the Republican Party. I'll do whatever it is to help. But my focus, my total focus is being president and, quite honestly, making America great again. Because we are living in a country in decline.
Did you take the job?
A lot of people.
And it's pretty standard Donald Trump stuff. A lot of people are saying that. Yeah. And McCaskill on Facebook is saying, I wish we had politicians who actually were on our sides, but we don't. We don't even have a real government. It's just a dictatorship pretty much, and has been for a while. Yeah, elite capture is something that we talk about around here for a while. I don't think that they're working for us. I think it has a lot to do with the kind of Chinese infiltration and subversion that is finally making its way into the mainstream Overton window. And that again on its own is a good sign that regular people are talking about this and worried about this. And they're adding, except maybe PPC, Bernier seems pretty cool. Yeah, I think so too. That's what I say. And I interviewed Bernier here on the program when he was running for Portage Lisgar, and he seems to have the right idea. I think he stands on his philosophy. He gives very coherent, complete answers to questions. They're not just talking points. He's going on principle. I think it's principle over politics. He said, you know, if he loses Portage Lisgar, he'll be back there again for the next election. And it's not really about the will to power. It's not about being the one in charge. It's about having these conversations and moving that Overton window. And that's something that we can all do. And I think that Maxime Bernier has done probably more than any other Canadian in that respect, really leading the charge in terms of moving the Overton window back to the moderate center. Okay, and here is New York Attorney General James, and they're tweeting, today was the first day of our trial against Donald Trump and the Trump Organization. Regardless of how many dangerous racist comments the former president makes, I am not going to back down from my duty to enforce the law. Okay, whatever. And calling people racist is what the Chinese Communist Party does whenever they stand up to the Marxist takeover that is currently underway. That's part of the PSYOP, and as was pointed out on one of the previous clips, I think it was on the Alex Jones clip there, like the establishment hates Donald Trump like that. He represents the greatest threat to the establishment and to Chinese global dominance of anybody in the world. And what do we see? Well, Donald Trump is literally Hitler. I think that goes a long way to explaining why it is that Donald Trump is such a polarizing figure. It is a lot of people that are taken in by the PSYOP, and it's just absurd. The guy had a black supermodel girlfriend for like 2 years back in the 90s. There, he's gotten awards from different black advocacy groups and stuff like this. It's just completely absurd, but that is the current state of affairs. All right, so the lawfare that's underway, this is the latest case that's been brought against Donald Trump and the Trump Organization. They're going after his properties, his wealth, his family. They're just trying to bankrupt him, because that has been the tactic for quite a while. These are activists, attorney generals, and establishment holdouts. So here is the Attorney General.
Today was the third day of our trial against Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, and other defendants. We continued to present our case, hearing more from our first witness and also from our second witness, a certified public accountant from the firm Whitley Penn. Whitley Penn compiled financial statements for Mr. Trump, the Trump Organization, and the other defendants. Meanwhile, the defendants continued to challenge our case, falsely claiming the underlying law is unconstitutional and other baseless claims, including that this is a witch hunt. Executive Law Section 6312 is the primary law used by my office in affirmative litigation. It is a special law giving the Attorney General exclusive power to investigate repeated and persistent fraud in business. Dangerous and racist comments will not deter me. The laws of this great state and nation apply equally to everyone, even Donald Trump. And it is my duty and my responsibility to ensure that the law is enforced and upheld. And I refuse to back down or to be bullied.
She's the one with the power of the state behind her, going after a private citizen. It's incredible that she thinks that she's the one being bullied. But that is, I think, an example of projection that we see coming from the left quite a bit. Yeah, and it's noteworthy that Donald Trump never had any of these problems before he broke ranks with his own generation and stood up to the establishment, and it's been nonstop, just impeachment and lawfare ever since. He had rap songs written about him back in the day. You know, he was kind of that example of sort of American exceptionalism. Boss man, this kind of thing. He was a pop culture icon before he ran for president, and never had any of these problems until then. And now all of a sudden he's been a fraud his entire life. So pretty clear, I think, what's going on here. He's a threat to the establishment, and so the establishment is fighting back. Here's Benny Johnson. He's the Trump attorney. Lena Haba gives best defense of Donald Trump on live TV after being dragged to court by unhinged New York City Democrats. Quote, "This is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen." Okay, so here we go. This is from Fox News.
I think there's reality, and then there's this world that they all live in, and they put on quite a performance trying to make it look like there was corruption that doesn't exist. And we got up and we made it very clear. First, let's start with something very basic. We are not supposed to be here doing this trial right now because we're not even sure what the scope is because the appellate division hasn't said so. Now we're sitting here in court. We're putting on our arguments and we're saying, wait a minute, you're relying on Michael Cohen. They played a clip from him today. I started laughing.
They played a clip of Michael Cohen at the court case today.
That was how they thought their strong point was. Let's start off.
Wait, Letitia
Michael
James,
Cohen.
the Democrat Attorney General, led with Michael Cohen in court.
Yes.
That should tell you everything you need to know. This judge looked a little creepy with a smile. What was your opinion of him?
I am not going to state it. I'm going to let you do it.
Very good. I'll state it. He looked very deranged. So the vibe inside was what? The president was there. He didn't have to show up, but he did. Why did he show up?
Because this is his company. This is his life. And people forget that President Trump, I hope they don't forget, you shouldn't, you can't. President Trump was a very important person before he was president. He was a successful businessman, which is why he was a great president. He built this company from scratch, and now they're attacking his business, the people that work for this business, and his children. It's uncanny, and he's not going to stand for it because this is political lawfare. This isn't the justice system. This is political 100%. He needed to be there. He needed to look him in the eye.
Does he beat this whole rap?
He should. And if he doesn't beat it in this court, I'll tell you right now, we'll beat it somewhere else. This is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen.
Yep. Just trying to strip him of his assets. He's a very powerful ally for those of us in favor of freedom, and a lot of that is because he's so rich. Not that he's like the richest guy or anything like that. I think he's worth $8 billion according to Forbes. So, but yeah, this is the kind of, like she says, political lawfare that they're engaged in right now to try to marginalize him. And Harriet is saying they are trying to shut him up. I don't think it's going to work. No, you cannot shut up Donald Trump. It's never going to work. And it's like he says, I'm just one more indictment away from having the presidency locked in, because every time they indict him, his poll numbers go up. I think they said 51% in a previous clip. So that's enormous. His favorability rating there is like 51%. So he's pretty much got the 2024 presidency locked in if everything is above board, and they're pulling out all the dirty stops to try to prevent him from running. And here is Jeanine Pirro, and she is a Fox News contributor and qualified as a judge. She was a previous judge, and she says, as a judge, there are certain standards you need to abide by. When defending Letitia James' prosecution of Donald Trump, the judge claimed Trump is a quote-unquote bad guy that deserves to be sought after, saying that is enough for this judge to be removed from this case. So here is a little background on the judge.
My co-host, Judge Jeanine Pirro, joins us. When you hear a judge talk like that,
I'm stunned. I'm stunned. When this guy says it's hard to factor out the emotions, judge, that's what you do. And if you can't do that, you don't belong on the bench. And I got to tell you, right from the get-go, what he liked about being a cabbie was the instant cash. And now he's dealing with Donald Trump's financial issues. And he liked being able to drive like a maniac and not getting caught. Look, as a judge, there are certain standards you have to abide by, Jesse. And the thing that made me crazy, even crazier than all this, is when he said that in defending Letitia James' prosecution of Donald Trump, albeit a civil case, he said, well, you know, he's just a bad guy that she should go after. That by itself is enough for this judge to be removed from the case. Because according to the administrative rules of the unified court system and the uniform rule of trial courts in New York, judge, you cannot sit on a case where you have a personal bias or a prejudice concerning a party. And if saying this is a bad guy that should be gone after isn't prejudice, then I don't know what is. He doesn't belong in this case. And let me go one step further. How about the incompetence of his not knowing what was beyond the statute of limitations, right? The inability to be able to assess the facts, forget your emotions. Like when you deal with the facts, you can't figure out what is barred by the statute of limitations. Are you stupid?
So he just hit Trump with a gag order because his clerk was in a photo with Chuck Schumer.
Trump said this was Schumer's girlfriend, and now Trump's not allowed to say anything about anybody in the court. Is that fair play?
You know what I think is the most interesting about that? That Chuck Schumer didn't answer the question, did he, Jesse? And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, we don't know if he's dating the woman or not, but I don't know. A gag order, Trump's going to break it.
You think?
Judge Bureau.
Yeah, that old First Amendment, it always comes in to bite you.
It's a tricky thing. Thank you.
Okay, so there you go. Totally unprofessional judiciary right now. And, I'm just looking at this judge and I'm like, this is, boomer male. He's, it's probably some burnt out radical from the 70s who, is longing for the revolution, the communist revolution, that is. So it's all pretty standard, I think, for what we've been seeing throughout the course of this fourth turning. And Debbie is here saying, good morning from Taber, Alberta. Special appreciation to the Westerners for being with me so early. And Debbie, you're late. So drop and give me 10. All right. And here is Viva Fry, and he's tweeting out a clip of Joe Rogan. He's saying it's not just the judge it's not just that the judge ruled Mar-a-Lago was worth 18 million. Yeah. Okay. So this is one of the details of the case that's coming out right now is the judge. They're assessing the value of Trump's assets for the purpose of destroying him, and they've assessed Mar-a-Lago to be worth 18 million. The judge ruled on a summary judgment as an undisputed fact that the property was only worth $18 million. You are indeed right. They don't give an F about the truth. It's all politics, all motivated reasoning, all legalized corruption. So here is Joe Rogan's comment. Well, I'm going to read this graphic first. It says, the fact that this court summarily found there is no question of fact, finding in part that Mar-a-Lago is worth approximately $20 million, and issue a decision of this magnitude is an affront to our legal system. So, the first part of that is, it's important to remember that the Trump Organization is an American success story. The statement said the fact that this court summarily found that there is no question of fact, finding that Mar-a-Lago is worth approximately $20 million is and issue a decision of this magnitude is an affront to our legal system. Okay, so and here's Joe Rogan's commentary on
the Mar-a-Lago controversy of the pricing or the
inflated value of the house.
The Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. The judge ruled that it was worth 18 million. It's 20 acres in like the most expensive real estate in that area. Like a house down the street from it, much smaller, just sold for $50 million.
Wow.
Even if Forbes said it's worth somewhere between, see what Forbes said. I think they said it was worth between $300 and $700 million. And they were saying that it's worth 18 million. It's like they don't even try to pretend.
Yeah.
Like
why does no one trust the mainstream?
If the guy says his house is worth $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
And then you come along and say, no, it's worth like 800 million. Forbes says it's worth as much as 700 million. We'll call it 700 million. Now you got a reasonable argument.
Yeah.
But if you say 18 million, like you got to know that's like a palace. The place is a palace. It's 20 acres. Get the fuck out of here. This is great. You can't do that. That's like too obvious. You don't give a fuck about the truth.
They don't.
You don't give a fuck about the truth.
No, they do not. It's all politics, and it's all about taking Donald Trump out of the game because he is the greatest threat to the establishment out there right now. This is the story that led to Speaker McCarthy being removed from his position. Al Jazeera reporting U.S. House passes massive $1.7 trillion spending bill. Bill boosts military spending to 10% for a total of $858 billion, alongside $772.5 billion for domestic programs. The United States House of Representatives voted on Friday to pass $1.7 trillion spending bill to avoid a partial government shutdown scheduled to take effect at midnight in Washington, D.C. The spending bill survived a Republican-led motion to adjourn, passing 225 to 201 along party lines. One of the major acts of the Democrat-led Congress, it now heads to the desk of Democratic President Joe Biden. Okay, just wanted to point that out. And military spending. Speaking of military spending, this is a video from yesterday, I think, and This is Redacted News, and they're doing a really great job following the conflict in Ukraine. So I just want to show a little update on that. And again, this is a terrible, terrible situation. They're driving us to toward World War III here. Nobody seems to understand why. I mean, I understand why. It's because it's highly profitable. Here's the latest from Redacted.
So Ukraine is running out of time. They're running out of weapons. They're running out of personnel. And we wanted to bring in ex-CIA analyst Larry Johnson, who follows this all very closely, to dive into this. Larry, a couple of big things I want to cover with you today. But first, I just want to get your response to what this woman, Leslie, has said about the truth about what's happening in Ukraine right now. They're admitting Russia's winning.
Yeah, well, it's evident if anybody's just been paying attention. Look at social media. Social media is the one thing that no government in the world can completely, fully control. They can try to shut it down. So when you go to social media, you see row upon row upon row of Ukrainian flags fluttering over freshly dug graves. Thousands of these. You don't see that in Russia.
Right.
So right there, it tells you right away that the casualties are in Ukraine. The average age of the soldier fighting on the front lines for Ukraine is 40 years old. That means you may have one or two who are 17 or 18, but you got a lot more who are over the age of 40. That speaks to a manpower loss. Just put the losses in context. Right now, it's estimated that Ukraine has lost over 500,000 men killed in action.
Wow.
During World War II, the British, the United Kingdom, its entire killed in action in both Europe, Africa, and the Pacific was 345,000. That was after 6 years of war. So we need to understand that what's unfolding right now in Ukraine is unbelievable carnage.
And the winter approaching. She admits that only a few weeks left, of course, until the cold weather, the immobilization of these troops, and basically admitting whatever sort of counteroffensive they had, they haven't really gained anything at all. In fact, it's been maybe inches here and there, and over close to 100,000 killed now just in this counteroffensive.
Yeah. What people didn't understand is that the defensive lines that Surovikin erected a year ago, they were not designed like the Alamo, where you stand and fight, and Jim Bowie laying on his bed throwing a Bowie knife as he's getting killed. Right. They are designed to be flexible. So when they come in, they bend, and then the Ukrainians go into what's called a salient, and then they get attacked from the side, and they're forced back out. So think of it more like a rubber band. But the truth of the matter is, and it was even reported by the New York Times, is that total land captured, Russia's captured far more than Ukraine. But this isn't about capturing land. It's about the question of, do you have a force that is trained, that you can sustain in the field, and that has a good logistics flow to it? And that's what's breaking down on the Ukrainian side. They're utterly dependent upon money from the West and weapons from the West. And in the last 2 or 3 days, we've had the British even admit, hey, we've run out. We don't have any more to send.
Right. This is a big revelation from the British side. We don't have any weapons to send, and frankly, we're out of money to send. And according to Ben Wallace, a former UK defense secretary, says Zelensky must start mobilizing young Ukrainians more. So now you've exhausted just about everything. Now let's start going into the youngest of the young and throwing them onto the front lines. And as you've been reporting on your Telegram and on your website, the countless number of young Ukrainian men in the funeral processions that you're not seeing in Western coverage. I mean, open caskets of Ukrainian soldiers, weeping mothers, weeping wives, people lining the streets as caskets are being brought down the Ukrainian streets. And you're not going to see that on CNN.
Right. Now, and it's what it's doing to the Ukrainian population. Look back again at World War II as a benchmark, as a reference point. The United States lost 472,000 killed in action in the Pacific and Europe and Africa. And we had a population then of about 160 million. Here's Ukraine, whose population right now in country is estimated to be around 25 million. And they've lost more people, more men than either the United States or Britain did during World War II. So this is approaching sort of, it's reminiscent more of the Chaco War back in Paraguay, where you lost an entire generation of men. And it's going to depopulate Ukraine. There will be nobody to have children.
Yeah, so not going so well for Ukraine over there, and of course they're lying to monger for more war. And somebody in the comments there was just mentioning Jeremy McKenzie's clip on this from the other day, so I'll go ahead and show it here. I think this is yesterday, and that was Cora saying Jeremy McKenzie had a great clip about the whole Ukraine situation yesterday. Yeah, I saw this, and I didn't originally put it in the lineup, but you know what, I should have. So let's go ahead and watch this one. It's about 4 minutes.
Are you worse than a pedophile? You might be. A lot of things going around these days. The moral outrage. Everyone's pretending to be morally outraged while having no real moral system or values whatsoever. More outraged about this statue or an old man that fought in a war 80 years ago that I don't understand. Very, very outrageous. What I find to be very outrageous is warmongering. I think it's equally or maybe worse than being a pedophile when you think about it, because the actions of warmongers and people that beat the war drums for things that they don't understand, they're just getting money, they're just getting rich, or there's political points in it, or for whatever, results in wide-scale destruction. The worst things that can happen to anyone living on Earth is war coming to your country and your home. Destroys everything, destroys everyone, and causes damage that lasts for generations, across millions of people. So when these politicians are out here clapping and cheering and carrying on this charade, I would love it if some journalist or somebody somewhere could go to these, one of these pat me on the back, feel good speaking events that these multimillionaire landlord politicians like to do, and say, I have a question. What is your position on the Maidan revolution? Who is Viktor Yanukovych, and do you support him? What is the Tornado Battalion? And can you tell me about their activities? Is this something Canada supports? Did we train those people? Now they're going to say, I don't really know anything about that. Oh, so you don't even know the origin story and genesis of this entire war way back in 2014. But yet you're more than happy to stand there, clap, cheer, and demand that Canadians send $10 billion and keep funneling money and guns into a place that most of them can't even find on a map, so people can keep killing each other. And there's probably 1 million dead, I would say. I'm not sure what the Russian figures are, but Ukraine suffered over 500,000 casualties. The United States suffered over 500,000 casualties fighting both the Empire of Japan and Germany at the same time in the entirety of World War II. That's how bad this is. This is like this is like Battle of the Somme level slaughter. I mean, human waves, tens of thousands of men just being sent to their deaths, and not even just men, women, children, pregnant women, grandmothers, disabled people, people with deformities, people missing hands. It doesn't matter. They'll find I saw them affix a hook to one guy's hand. You can pull trigger with this. He's gone. He's dead. He sent him to the front line to die. This is what you're supporting mindlessly. So for all of these people, all these, causes and stuff out there, you're all concerned about, the children and stuff. Do you care about the widespread inhumane level of destruction being caused in Ukraine? That was entirely our fault. We pushed this from the beginning. Like I said, I know a couple of things. I've been paying attention to this for a while. No one in the House of Commons has. They don't even know that somebody that fought in World War II 80 years ago against the Russians, well, we don't really know what side he's on. We're just going to mindlessly stand up and clap. So if you're going to be morally outraged, if you're going to sit here and go, oh my God, I can't believe these people, we have to put a stop to this. Can we put a stop to just having collectively blood on the hands of this entire nation, forwarding and pushing forward a war that makes no sense? None of them can, it makes sense when you know what's going on, but they're not going to explain it to you. I guarantee none of them even know what the revolution is or when it was or what it's about. And Viktor Yanukovych, what happened? Don't care. Just give me more money. We got to get the libs out. You disgust me. You're worse than pedophiles. You enable destruction and killing and pain and suffering on a scale that is unmatched in human ability. You did that.
Yeah, well said. In typical rage fashion. And that is the thing. I mean, this carnage is something we funded and continue to fund. Like, it never would have gone on as long as it did if we weren't doing what we're doing right now. And McCaskill JE again on Facebook is saying, I watch a lot of the stuff coming out of Ukraine from the Russian perspective. Helmet cams, actual footage, captured footage. It's horrific. The Ukrainians are being forced under threat of execution if they don't go to the front lines just to become cannon fodder. The Ukrainian government is pure evil. So many innocent people just being slaughtered because of Zelensky, and our money being taken right from the Canadian coffers by Trudeau to slaughter hundreds of thousands of people for profit. Yeah, and it is about the rebuilding contracts. In my assessment, it's of course the military-industrial complex is something that we've been talking about for decades now. That was something I believe it was Truman warned us about. Might have been FDR. The thing is, like, this wouldn't be going on anywhere near as long as it has if we weren't funding it. And what we've seen in recent decades, particularly with what they call the Second Iraq War, was they didn't give a damn about the people living there. They didn't do much of anything to help them. They made everything worse for them. Because it was all about nepotism. And I can remember reading Naomi Klein's book. She's a Canadian author. It's called Shock Doctrine, The Rise of Disaster Capitalism. Doesn't really rise to the level of proving its central thesis that this all goes back to the CIA somehow, but it's become very profitable, this kind of disaster capitalism where, populations or communities are decimated, and then these companies come in for the big rebuilding contracts. Some of that is good. We see a lot of things like storm chasers coming up from the United States to help Canadians restore power after a major storm. It basically works like Uber. They go where the money is. And it produces better outcomes for people that way. But with the military-industrial complex, what they seem to be up to now is they're, obviously in bed with corporations, and there are all these corporate interests that are driving this. And so they just go in there, destroy nations so they can get the rebuilding contracts like they did in Iraq, where they had the person running the traffic plan for the city of Baghdad, a city of 5 million people, was a brand new, fresh university grad in their early 20s, but they were somebody's daughter. So it was just nepotism across the board. And what you end up with in that situation is traffic lights that don't work, and extremist groups coming out into the intersections to guide traffic, gaining popular support, and then you end up with never-ending insurgency. So that is exactly the kind of thing that makes the rest of the world hate the United States and the West. And it's just due to greed that results in mismanagement and the destruction of countries. So it's despicable and sick, and we need to call it out and get the hell out of this. Okay. I'll just drop this one off here. Good job, Jeremy, as usual.
There will be no fathers.
For always. Okay, so here's Jim Ferguson, and he says, breaking, Ukraine surrendering, and the end approaches. Special radio frequency being used so that Ukrainian soldiers can safely surrender to Russian forces. Prepare for Zelensky to run before capture. Thousands of Ukrainian soldiers are opting to surrender to the Russian army. These surrenders are seen even through a newly established Russian radio frequency. Clayton Morris, an American journalist, expressed an astonishment and said, "This is a story the Western media does not want to show you." And I wanted to draw attention to this because I've seen the videos out there. There are all kinds of Ukrainians surrendering, entire battalions, in fact, that are surrendering. But there's this story that's kind of making its way around social media right now that they're surrendering en masse, and that there are tens of thousands of them at a time that are surrendering. It's not quite going like that. It's going in the right direction, but it's not quite on that scale. It says here, readers out of context, they thought people might want to know. This is false. There is no news source currently that highlights a mass number of Ukrainian soldiers surrendering. The image posted along with this tweet was released by the Russian Ministry of Defense in April of 2022. Reverse image links it back to articles from this time period. So, yeah, we just want to be careful we don't end up down our own rabbit holes, promoting a false narrative like that. So it's not quite on the scale that we're all hoping for. They're not these mass surrenders like we're hoping for, but they are happening. And the radio frequency, as far as I understand, is a real thing. Like they're blasting it out over radio frequency that, they will accept the surrender of Ukrainians. I think it is going to move in that direction. It's just going to be a little more gradual than we might have hoped. Okay, so that brings us to the Veterans for Freedom website. You can check out veteransforfreedom.ca. Subscribe to our newsletter here by clicking subscribe. Join Veterans for Freedom if you're a veteran by clicking join. Support Veterans for Freedom by clicking support. There are two options to do that. V4F donation, that helps us keep the lights on around here. It pays for our operational costs like the website and my StreamYard account. And then we have the support fund. You can click here for support. And this is a pool of donations that everybody who donates gets a chance to vote as to where it goes. Here are our candidates for this month. We got 3 days left to vote on where the donations go for this month. And number one is Saba Vizi, Romanian-born trucker who got the crap kicked out of him at the end of the convoy and was on Fox News. And he still needs about $20,000 to fund his legal defense. Kimberly Newdorf is a Canadian wife, mother, and homeschooler who was recently convicted and fined $7,000 plus costs for organizing 2 peaceful demonstrations against provincial government-imposed restrictions on constitutionally enshrined rights and freedoms. And of course, the Coots 4, who are still interned as political prisoners in Alberta. With 3 days left to vote for those guys, everybody will have the chance to opt in to 10% of your donation going to Valor Legal Action Center. They are the tip of the spear in the legal fight against these mandates and getting some kind of jurisprudential reckoning for Canadians. All very worthy causes. Please donate if you can. And if you would like a little merch to show off your donation, you can check out our merch store, because all the proceeds here from our merch store, again, they go to Veterans for Freedom. So this is another way you can support us. As you can see, we have the bumper sticker, innocent until proven guilty, for the Coots 4, Afghan Memorial Poppies, Canada March t-shirts, V4F hoodies, the Infinite Resolve collar pin, like the one on my hat here. And also the Resolve patch, which is Velcro, is available to you. This is what I wear instead of a poppy these days. And we have some limited edition James top prints with free shipping as well. And again, all of the proceeds go to supporting our ongoing advocacy with Veterans for Freedom. Okay, that brings us all the way back to our Kim Campbell quote. Canada is the homeland of equality, justice, and tolerance. Well, at least we used to be. I think that just goes to show just how contrived the whole narrative is right now around all of this Nazi racist BS. And like I said, I think it is part of the PSYOP being inflicted on the West right now. It targets Christianity in particular. It targets white people in particular, all things Western. It's right out of the Frankfurt School playbook of Aufhebender culture, as in destroy their culture. It's quite Maoist. Mao was the one credited with the postmodernists or culturally Marxist praxis of Marxist mass line attack, which is basically the Aufhebender culture. A lot of people think that Marxism is an economic theory, when in fact it's the whole of society. It's a social theory, and they apply it to everything. Marxist praxis would include intersectionality, critical race theory, that kind of thing. So it's the Marxist theory applied to humans. That is what I believe that we're living through right now. And of course, you can see how obviously contrived the whole narrative is when you just reflect on a quote like this from back in 93, Canada is the homeland of equality, justice, and tolerance. Yeah, that is the truth. And the rest of it, I think, is part of the PSYOP, like I say. So, all right, guys, I'm just going to throw to a few comments here before I sign off. Colleen is saying, another terrific show. Jeff, thank you so much. It's my pleasure, Colleen. Thanks for always tuning in. I do appreciate you guys. And James is saying, thanks, Jeff and audience. Have a great day and do your push-ups. Yes, we should all do some push-ups. They are good for us. And Evelyn is saying, take care all. Marion says, great show, Jeff. Much appreciate your research and time. Thank you. It's my pleasure, guys. And just a reminder, I am going to take a couple of weeks off starting there next week. You know, I need a little break from the drama and the internet and stuff like that. But I also have a lot of things around the house that I kind of got to get caught up on, some projects. And so I think just kind of disconnecting and doing a little bit of hard work is going to be therapeutic for me. So just to remind you guys, I'm going to be offline for a couple of weeks starting next week there. And Brenda says, more great content today, Jeff. Yes, thank you very much. I'm glad that you guys appreciate it. And Steve is saying, see you tomorrow, Red Friday, pro patria, Six Semper Tyrannis. So pro country and thus always to tyrants. Thanks, Steve. I do appreciate you. And Debbie says, thank you. Steve has given us the triple slashy. Daryl says, thanks, Jeff. And McCaskill says, thanks for everything you do, Jeff. So much appreciated. Thank you very much for your support and for tuning in. And Zebex Demise over in Rebel says, thanks, Jeff. Have a good day, everyone. Yes, have a good day to you as well. And till next time, guys, stay frosty and stay safe out there.